Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin Schall, Alex Wolfe, a somewhat brutal 114-107 loss for the New York Knicks against the Boston Celtics. But it was a fun game. Kemba Walker's back. He went off. Evan Fournier, another 32-point game against the Boston Celtics. He can't do it against anyone else, but he's really good against Boston. What else are we going to get into, Alex?
Well, we're going to talk about Kemba's game, what made it good, what maybe made it bad, or at least the same as before in many ways, and talk a little bit about Fournier as well. Talk about whether Kemba has done enough to justify a position in the rotation going forward based off of this performance. And we're also going to talk about, it's not even really the elephant in the room at this point. I mean, people have been talking about it, but we're going to give our 2 cents on the COVID situation in the NBA, what's been going wrong, and just our general opinions of the NBA's handling of the situation to end the show. So all that's coming up next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. And we want to thank you, as always, for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today. And every day we are available on all platforms, including on YouTube. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. And today's sponsor is brought to you by, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. They are a sponsor, though. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. And I am Gavin Schall, a play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolfe, the editor-in-chief of the Strickland. I pared down that was our descriptions made easy. That was nice and quick. All right, because we have a lot to talk about today. The Boston Celtics beat the New York Knicks in Boston. The Knicks are missing basically half their team in this game. No Derrick Rose, no Deuce McBride, no Obi Toppin, no RJ Barrett. A myriad of others presumably missing in action as well. And Kemba Walker was back from the dead, and he was masterful for the most part. 37 minutes, 29 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 8 for 20 from the field, 5 for 11 from 3. This is the stat that really stood out to me. 8 for 10 from the foul line, Alex. It looked like he benefited a lot from the time off. He had the juice of a much younger Kemba Walker, and he was a blast to watch, regardless of what the implications of this performance are going forward.
Yeah, I mean, so it was great to see him back out there to a degree, and he definitely seemed fired up. You know, he clearly wanted to get back on the floor. I mean, he's a career basketball player. Of course, he wants to play basketball, and getting benched is not something that's ever happened to him in his career. Like, at any point, he's literally been like a star for like most of his basketball life, dating all the way back to high school. So to be benched, I'm sure, was sort of confusing, humbling, whatever else, particularly for his hometown Knicks. You know, you could tell that he wanted to kind of make a statement. You know, there's been all kinds of stories written since the game, you know, based off his post-game media availability about how apparently since Tibbs benched him, they haven't really talked at all. You know, he could be seen kind of like jawing out on the court a little bit, and it looked like he was maybe directing some of that towards Tibbs on the bench. So who knows, you know, what's going on there. I will say my main thing was, as great as it was seeing him on offense, and I agree, the big thing was definitely the free throws. Like, he was getting inside more, which was very key. And, you know, he was generating offense for himself and others that way, which is exactly what, you know, you wanted from him to start the season. And he was making his pull-up threes. He made some spot-up threes. You know, it was just good. I mean, he and Randall even had a few moments that made you say, okay, like, hey, look, where was this 10 games ago? Maybe you wouldn't be on the bench right now if this was how you guys were playing together. My only issue really is that on the defensive end, he looked just as bad as ever too. And it was a problem in this game because the Knicks had to play some like truly wacky lineups in this game. You had at one point Julius Randle, Taj Gibson, and Mitchell Robinson all out there together as your 3, 4, and 5 combo. I mean, that's bizarre to the bizarrest degree. And, you know, they were out there, I think for a spell with Kemba. They also was out there with Burks and Fournier at one point too. But like, there were some kind of weird lineups where the Knicks really needed good team defense in this game. And granted, maybe you were never going to find that regardless, because a lot of their best defenders are out right now with COVID protocols, with obviously Obi, RJ, Deuce, quickly, even for his, does his part on defense really well. All these guys are out, and that makes it hard to, have your team defense be as good as it possibly can be. But the team defense was terrible, and it started a lot of times with Kemba letting his man get completely by him. We were talking before the show too, and you had even mentioned like they were just spamming this pick and roll where Tatum, would pop off of the pick and roll, and Kemba was never getting to him quick enough, and that was leading to tons of open threes for Tatum as well, who wound up with 25 points of his own, and didn't actually shoot that well from three, but probably could have made this game a lot worse because like the Boston starters just didn't have a great performance in this game, and really got kind of bailed out by Josh Richardson going crazy off the bench. But that's my big thing with Kemba. Like, this kind of just reminded me of, say, like the Philly game, for example, where he was really good on offense, but basically, as we've seen so far this year, if he's not hitting 100% on offense, like on all cylinders, then his defense is going to make him a negative player this year. And that sort of became the case down the stretch, where he got done scoring in the third quarter and never scored another point after that. And the fourth quarter, go figure, after taking the lead in the third, the Knicks coughed it up and wound up losing the game.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing on those Jason Tatum plays is I don't even know what the call is there from Tibbs, because I don't think, I mean, this is Benji pointed this out to everyone on Twitter initially, but I didn't like, was Kemba supposed to switch on to Tatum? Because all year long, like Tibbs had been contorting his defense, so Kemba never had to switch. And to me, that was like more than anything offensively or in terms of fit or even like his one-on-one defensive matchups. I think that was the single biggest issue that Tibbs had, is he wanted a defense that could be multiple, that could switch when they had to, that had like-sized players. But Kemba, just like, you have that one weak link, it sort of totally removes that option off the table, because then opposing offenses are just going to target him, which the Celtics did smartly a couple of times, and they got some key buckets out of it, to your point. That being said, I want to circle around and just talk about the positive a little bit, because he was, I mean, it's just like, this is what we were excited about this offseason. It's just fun to have a fully realized Kemba Walker on the Knicks, right? Because the Knicks haven't had that guy in, I mean, like, I guess it's quickly when he's playing at his best, but like the dude who's dribbling up and like nailing pull-up threes and like toasting dudes off the dribble and getting to the rim and taking contact and still finishing, like that's like, it's the article that Prez wrote in the preseason, right? The New York point guard that's been promised. Like, we got that for, I guess it was only 3 quarters, but we got that for 3 quarters tonight. And it was awesome. I mean, we can get into this more when we talk about Evan Fournier, but for both of them, the energy and like the fuck you attitude that they had, which we haven't, like, we saw it on opening night against the Celtics. And then from Fournier in particular, like, we've seen it maybe for like 4-minute stretches at a time. But that to me has been his biggest issue, is that he's been lacking that. Like if he has that attitude, it's directed at Tibbs and Julius Randle. It's not directed at the other team, right? But we got that from both of them, and it was so much fun. I mean, and with Kemba, just seeing like the full range of his abilities, like starting off the night with a double pump layup, then a 3 around the screen, then a pull up jumper, then like a savvy, like he had that great pump fake with 2 seconds left on the shot clock to draw 3 free throws when the Knicks didn't have anything going. He had 5 rebounds in the first half that led the entire team. I mean, maybe that's an issue in its own right, that Noel and Randall and Mitch like aren't having more than that. But I just loved like the pace and the passion that he was playing with. He keyed that 17-2 run to start the second half. And then right after that 17-2 run, he gathered the entire team in like a little huddle. Like you see that in like, I think like women's college basketball a decent amount. And you rarely see that in the NBA, but Kemba's like, hey guys, let's keep it together. Let's keep playing sharp. Like we expelled all this energy to get the lead. We got to keep this up. And I think that's a quality that's just been lacking on this Knicks team all year, that cohesive leadership. And to Kemba's credit, he's continued to bring it on the bench, but it means so much more when you're leading the charge on the court. So if there's an argument to be made that he should continue to play, I think it should be predicated on that this guy brings something from an intangibles perspective that the Knicks just don't have. But we can have that conversation in just a sec, because we have to take a quick break and tell everyone about Truebill. So Truebill is a fantastic way to save yourself a whole lot of money. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts, and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions all in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and helps save them over $100 million. So don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now, truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. So with that, we are back on Locked On Knicks. And Alex, I just had a whole long rant, so I'll throw it right over to you. What are your thoughts now on, I mean, you can take this from either perspective, like your personal perspective on what should happen with Kemba Walker in the Knicks, or what actually will happen with Kemba Walker
Yeah.
in the Knicks.
Yeah, I may as well just give both. I mean, I think my general impression is that the second that the team is back to full strength, he's back out of the rotation again. I mean, he was talking like a guy who doesn't expect to see the floor again once the team is healthy. Just kind of being like, I just stay ready, I do my thing. I don't know why Tibbs benched me. I may never know. We don't talk, blah, blah, blah. That all gotten into. And, I think that I feel pretty safe in saying at this point, the rift seems to be there between those two, where I don't think that things are going to get repaired unless Kemba really starts balling out and maybe like wins the Knicks a game or two right now, as they've been really skidding while all these injuries are going, or not even just injuries, all these COVID cases are going on, as well as the Rose injury. But I guess we'll see as far as that's concerned. But I think I will say, if it was me, and this was always kind of my thought to a degree, I don't understand why Tibbs would be against playing Kemba off the bench. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that as just like a bench microwave guy, he could definitely do that. And, maybe that's kind of a hurt to, a blow to Kemba's ego or whatever, but it can't be any more of a blow to his ego than just not playing at all. So I think at this point, having already had him just not play, period, maybe now you could kind of just be like, all right, well, here's a compromise. Can you play off the bench for us? And we'll see how it goes. And maybe the way that you make that happen, I think Burks has been kind of struggling in the starting lineup lately. And the Knicks have definitely been missing having that little bit of extra playmaking at the point guard spot with Burks out there instead of someone like a Derrick Rose or a Quickly. So why not take one of those two guys who are playing well in Rose or Quickly, put them in the starting lineup, and have Kemba be like your backup point guard off the bench? Or, if you put Quickly in the starting lineup, just kind of have Kemba and Rose come out there and just like play together off the bench. I mean, I know that that's kind of rough defensively to have those two out there, but how much more rough could it be than like Kemba and Fournier, or something like that? And at least then you have Alec Burks back in that backup unit to kind of help with the perimeter defense there. You still have Noel or Mitch or whoever coming off the bench at center to help protect on the inside. And then ideally you have Obi Toppin out there too, who's just kind of a whirling dervish and does whatever. So I think if it was me, I would probably say, all right, Kemba can score. Now he's kind of got a chip on his shoulder. Let's take advantage of the chip on his shoulder and give him some minutes off the bench and just see how that works, where there's not as much pressure on him to defend some of the best guards in the league and whatever, and defend every team's best players, put him out there with bench players so those defensive deficiencies don't look quite so bad, but the offense looks every bit as good. So I think that would be my plan with him going forward. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm of a similar opinion. I think it's a fair question at this point, and granted, we need much more of a sample size before you can make a comparison between the two. But obviously, then you're taking Miles McBride out of the equation, and maybe the reality of the situation is when everyone's healthy is neither of them are playing. That probably is the reality. So maybe it's a moot point. But I would be curious to see how Miles looks with that bench unit as well. But yeah, I'm with you. I think I would give Kemba a shot. Again, I'm just all about fun at this point in the year, and I think that is probably the most fun solution. What I think ultimately will happen, though, is that he will play a couple of games, and the Knicks will use this as a showcase and say, let's highlight this guy as much as humanly possible. Let's let him drop 25 plus in 3 straight games, even if he has to take a lot of shots to get there. And it's a weird thing because, I mean, like, teams mostly aren't dumb. They know what Kemba Walker is. They know what Kemba Walker isn't. So I don't know necessarily how much doing that will affect his value, but for the teams that want to know that, okay, if we have him on a rest plan, if we're only playing him 15 minutes a night, does he still have that juice occasionally? And we saw that tonight. Yeah. And that's someone who can swing. I don't want to say a playoff series, but a playoff game, and a game maybe swings a series. Like, why can't he provide what Lou Williams brought to the Hawks last year? I know Lou Will was a different player and brought different strengths, but I think he is an asset in the right context. So,
And you could basically take him and spray him with, some gold spray paint real quick, and it might not stay forever, but you can make him look like a shiny object again for some team,
yeah,
hopefully.
yeah, and I think he should be. Like, he is still a fantastically talented scorer, as we see. You just can't overtax him. And the Knicks, I think the role and the plan that they had for him this season was inherently overtaxing, because he had to be so good on offense to compensate for what he was leaving off the table on defense. But Alex, do you have any final points on Kemba, or you want to move on to Evan Fournier?
Yeah, we may as well move to Fournier. So I'll give the stat line here: 32 points, 13 of 24 shooting, 4 of 10 from three, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 4 turnovers in 42. Oh yeah, let's just say 43 minutes of action in this game to lead the team. I mean, Evan Fournier versus the Celtics, hell of a player. I'll say that much. I mean, I outside of a little bit early in the game, which, like, you had pointed this out on Twitter, and Benji, I think, or Tom Piccolo, I'm sorry, Tom Piccolo was the one that had pointed this particular play out. I mean, early in the game, it was kind of same old with Fournier, where he got the ball in the corner and had nobody within like 8 feet of him, and then paused, and then pump faked, and then didn't take the shot, and then tried to drive in and took an ill-fated attempt around the rim. And I was just like, why, dude? Like, just shoot. Like, why is it so hard to just shoot? You're supposed to be a shooter. And, so that was frustrating. And then as the game went on, he kind of found his confidence, it looked like, and you could see it. And our buddy Ariel Pacheco said this on Twitter, that he actually liked Fournier being able to kind of play make. And a few people I saw were like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, no, like, let him have the ball in his hands, and not necessarily play make in the sense of like trying to be like Chris Paul and distribute the ball, but just in the sense of like letting him sort of find his spots that way, and then trusting him to hopefully find a more open man if he isn't open, And I thought he did a pretty decent job at doing that. He was, kind of working the mid range a little bit. He was doing a good job of kind of like using screens on the perimeter, or just in general kind of like using a hezzy real quick to like get by somebody and start getting towards the hoop and take a smart shot around there. Like, only 4-10 from three for him to still get 32 points is pretty good with only 2 free throws. So it was probably one of his most efficient games of the season, based off the lack of free throws and all that. And I was impressed with how he played. I wish that he could play like this every day, because even on defense, unlike Kemba, who still looked like a big liability on defense, Fournier had some pretty good possessions. There was one that stands out to me where he put Tatum in jail, and that's not easy to do. And it was like him versus Tatum one-on-one, and Tatum tried to ISO him for about 14 solid seconds, and Fournier just kept holding him, and then all of a sudden it was half a second left on the shot clock, and Tatum had to force up some garbage because Fournier just completely flabbergasted him. So I wish we could see more of that on both ends. I mean, I thought this was maybe, other than the first game, the opener against the Celtics, because that was a win, obviously, but I think this is maybe Fournier's best game as a Knick so far. And if not, it's definitely like top 2 or 3. It was easily one of the best games I've seen from him, just on both ends of the floor, which was pretty nice to see.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Let's take a quick break. We can only presume that Evan Fournier only eats Built Bars before Celtics games, Alex. But why don't you tell everyone a little bit about how Built Bar can help people perform and help people pack on some weight in a healthy way?
Well, how about I just say, this holiday season, you should grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but they're amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There's so many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you have raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream or peanut butter brownie? Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. So throw one in your jacket or purse. You never know when you're going to need it. Are you friends with Santa? Well, tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars in those stockings. With so many flavors, they'd make anyone's Christmas morning a happy one. And if you want to cozy up with something warm, here's a new holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa, let it melt a little, and give your beverage a bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. Be sure to have a couple napkins on hand because it might get messy. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you will get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And today's show is also brought to you by BetOnline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues the march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Gavin, I'll throw it to you. Do you want to give a final point on Fournier, or should we start talking about the COVID issue with the Knicks and the entire NBA?
Now I want to talk Fournier real quick because I thought, like you, that pretty clearly his best game of the year, after a tough start with that inexplicable pump fake that just made me want to vomit. But from there on, he was just a different dude, right? Like, this was French national team Fournier. This was a guy we've been begging for all season, like someone who played like this was a single elimination game for a gold medal, like cutting to the basket off the ball, getting to the rim, taking advantage over and over again. And this is something that Kemba Walker did too, that I was thinking that, maybe this is why they got off to such confident starts. They attacked the artist formerly known as Kemba Walker, or not just Kemba Walker's, and his Cantor again and again and again in pick and roll. And it made life so easy because Freedom now would just drop all the way back to the rim. And Fournier and Kemba could just rain floaters or rain pull-up jumpers or make smart passes to the center for little dump-offs and little layups. And that's how they got going early. And then once they built that confidence on the interior, you saw both of them just start raining threes. Like Kemba went on that run where he hit 2 in a row and hit that big pull-up that drew the timeout, and he started jawing at the camera. Fournier had a 26-footer off of a handoff from Julius Randle, and it was 4 feet beyond the arc. And it's a shot that he probably wouldn't have had the confidence to take the last few weeks. And if he did, it probably would have bricked off the side of the backboard. But this time it went in. You made the point about Tatum. That was maybe my single favorite play of this game that anyone had. But on top of that, like, I just remember, it might've been 2 or 3 games back, but he had a play where he played fantastic defense and then just sort of watched the ball, and a guy got right around him, got the ball back, and then went straight in for the layup. And I was just like, all right, how do you not finish the play? And tonight he was finishing plays. Like, he was sprinting and tipping out rebounds. And that's everything that you want from the guy. Even his final basket where he hurt his ankle, it was just nasty. Like, double between the legs against Tatum, pull up over Marcus Smart, who was being a bit of a jerk and stuck his foot under Fournier's when he landed, which led to Kemba Walker fouling out. Incidentally, fantastic play by Marcus Smart, I guess. But amazing night from Fournier. If the Knicks keep getting this, like, all of a sudden we won't have an issue with the guy. And I know he's not always going to shoot like this, but I just mean that level of effort in on both ends of the floor. And really, even more than effort, I think it's competitiveness. Like, he needs to play pissed off. And I think, again, some of that pissed off has been directed in the wrong direction. If he can consistently push that towards the other team, whatever he's feeling towards other guys on this roster, we don't know about that. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that isn't a thing. It would make a massive difference. Before we get into the COVID stuff, I just wanted to try to think if anyone's like worth a shout out. Alec Burks, sneakily nice game, 41 minutes, 19 points on 9 shots, 3 for 6 from three, 6 for 9 from the charity stripe. Also had 4 assists. Did have one just incredibly boneheaded throwaway where Julius Randle was wide open and he inexplicably just tossed it over to a Celtic. His first basket of the game, one of the like cleanest buckets I've seen all year that any Knick had. He went behind the back into a jab step and then a gorgeous like step through up and under. He just makes guys look stupid sometimes, and he's such a high skill level and he's so smooth, like just one of those people who look like they were born to play basketball. And then quick shout out to Nerlens Noel and Mitchell Robinson, who I thought were pretty ordinary overall, but both had great fourth quarters defensively, or at least the first half of the fourth quarter. And Nerlens Noel finished with 3 steals, or excuse me, 3 blocks and 2 steals. Mitch had the 2 steals, both of them coming in the fourth. I thought they played really great defense down the stretch. And for everything that Fournier was doing on offense to keep the Knicks in it, those two were supplying on defense. Randall, pretty forgettable night, but I think we've talked enough about Randall the last few weeks. Like I don't feel the need to get into it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just quickly shout out the fact that for as maligned as Knicks starters have been this year, the starters in this game scored 104 out of 107 points. The bench had a grand total of trace points, 3, and they were all from Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah,
So
stretch 4 Taj Gibson didn't really come through on
it did not,
offense.
yeah, that did not work very well. Neither did 10 minutes of Wayne Selden. So shout out to the starters for once for being the source of offense here. And if that again, if that's something that can stick, maybe this team post COVID breakout is something different. But let's talk about the COVID breakout real quick. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a hot button thing right now, so I figured we should probably just comment on it at least a little bit. But uh, I mean, I just can't get over how transparent the NBA is being about caring more about having their Christmas slate intact than potentially fan or player safety at this point. And I feel like it's undoing a lot of goodwill that the NBA had kind of built up for the last, year and change, where they were one of the first leagues to shut down, due to COVID. Of course, after Rudy Gobert touched a bunch of reporters' things and breathed all over them and actually had COVID, as it turned out. But they managed to, shut down their season. They managed to come back and pull off a bubble where they were extremely strict with testing, extremely strict with, keeping the pandemic out of their bubble that they built. And it was beautiful. It gave us sports when we really needed it, built up a ton of goodwill for being able to pull that off. And then last season, I think they were actually pretty solid about being like, okay, no fans for a long time, until things start coming through with vaccinations and stuff like that, and we can get testing in place, and then we'll sort of leave it up to arenas too, but like we'll start to slowly let fans come back to enjoy the game in a safe way. They were doing so much more in the way of testing. They had so much more in the way of like protocols, that the players still had to follow, similar to during the bubble, where guys, if they were getting caught breaking protocol, were facing hefty fines and stuff like that to make it worth it for them to not want to screw up. And now I just feel like it's all this season gone out the window, and the NBA now staring Christmas Day games in the face, in like less than a week from now. There's now like it's got to be pushing 70 players in protocol at the time that we're recording this. You have multiple teams that now have almost half the roster out, that are now having to postpone games and everything else. And if we were literally at any other point in the season, I feel like the NBA would just say, we're shutting down for a few weeks. We need to get this under control. But instead they're not. And not only is it, you're now saying, okay, players can catch COVID and we don't really care, because we'll just let them keep catching COVID and, keep putting them in arenas full of fans, which they haven't enacted anything yet to say, hey, maybe let's scale back to like 50%, in arenas and stuff like that to make things a little safer for people. Because obviously people are given the opportunity, they're going to try to go, so sometimes the league just kind of has to step in and do these things themselves. And maybe at a certain point, like New York City even, or, other cities will just start stepping in and just passing these things themselves, which I guess has sort of been the NBA's mantra this season. It's like, we're not going to do anything. We're going to leave it up to the cities to do these things. But, there's just, there's so many things that I feel like they're doing wrong, and it's pretty transparently to me just to protect their Christmas Day slate, which other than the postseason is like their Super Bowl, for the regular season, where they always have a full slate of games for the whole day, big time ratings, big time viewership, whatever. But at this point, I don't even understand their rationale, because if they keep letting things go how they're going, they're going to have a bunch of games of like 5 players on 5 players from the end of various benches, and G League teams are the only guys that are going to be able to play at this point. And I don't understand it. Like, Trae Young just entered protocols today, so he's probably out for that game coming up. Some of the guys on the Knicks are still going to be out. The Nets are decimated right now. Just so many teams around the NBA are just completely floored by the virus right now. And I don't know. I understand that they've now postponed a couple of games, but I really feel like it's on the NBA to do more than they've been doing lately with the COVID situation.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like fatigue, right? Even last year, I remember listening to JJ Redick's podcast, and he was talking about just how exhausting it was to go in at 8 a.m. every day for COVID testing when they were flying in and out of cities and bouncing around, and for everyone. I mean, it was just a massive emotional drain to worry about. And this was true in the NBA. This was true in the real world. And I think at a certain point, people just get tired of it. And that's not, to be clear, that's not a justification for what the NBA is doing. I just think it's the reality of the situation where everyone is quote unquote over it. And that's a very frustrating stance when, I mean, people's health is on the line. And you can argue with Omicron, of course, that, I mean, presumably that's what the variant that the majority of these guys are getting. That's the variant that is pinging around New York and getting thousands and thousands of people sick right now. To the best of our knowledge, again, neither of us are doctors, neither of us are epidemiologists. It is less likely to produce severe disease. And the NBA in turn is saying these guys are young and healthy. Let's just keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But the point in all this is a illness that isn't supposed to produce severe disease spread out over a large enough sample size will eventually produce severe disease. And like we're a year removed from guys like Jason Tatum saying like they were having trouble breathing all of last season, right? Like this isn't a joke. It's more important than basketball. It's more important than the money that the NBA is going to make. And it just feels just so beyond negligent that even if they weren't going to start the season taking every precaution possible, the second this started, you're not going to like test everyone every single day, which you have the capacity to do because you're a multi-billion-dollar company. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think you said it very well, but it's very frustrating. It feels like they're putting again the product that's not going to be a very good product on Christmas Day because all these stars are going to probably be out over the health of the players and I guess the like integrity of the game to some point with what's going on with Kyrie Irving now. Like I don't. That's a whole another conversation, but that to me is sort of like the epitome of what is wrong with this whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, the Kyrie thing is just it's kind of hilarious. The gotcha quotes for Sean Marks and Joe Tsai and all the people involved with the Nets organization to have said not 2.5 months ago, like if that 2 months ago, period. It was only 2 months ago, saying we don't want Kyrie Irving back if he's going to be a part-time player. He can either get vaccinated or not come back. And then the second that Kyrie finally says, hey, I'll be a part-time player and just play on the road, the Nets say, yeah, okay, fine, that's fine. I don't know, and the fact that it's the fact that it was being celebrated by some people too. It bothers me some because I just think that it starts putting sports above public health, and it's also on top of everything else, and some people might be like, oh, stop getting political. This isn't political. It's never been political, but you're going to be giving Kyrie Irving a platform to potentially spew misinformation again about the virus and about the vaccine, and that's also not beneficial for anybody right now. When people and the league and everything else are clearly still not taking things seriously, um, and that's disappointing as well from the Kyrie perspective, because the reality is you could say all you want that oh, I don't know what the vaccine is going to do to me. The reality is that the CDC or the just said that they don't recommend the Johnson & Johnson vaccine anymore because it was producing cases of a severe side effect, the blood clotting issue, in 3.63 out of every million sticks of the vaccine. That's a 0.0000363 chance of getting a side effect from the vaccine that could potentially be lethal to you. Whereas we've seen over a vastly greater sample size that you have probably like a, I don't know, like 2 to 3% chance of getting a severe side effect out of COVID. So you're talking about, a 1,000, 10,000, whatever times more effective or more likely outcome, I guess I should say, of catching COVID versus getting the vaccine as far as bad side effects to your health and everything else. So I hope that those sort of things are that the sort of things that Kyrie is going to come back and say are checked as often as they should be, but I fear that they're not going to be, in favor of people just being like, I don't care what Kyrie says anymore. He's nuts. I'm just glad to see him play basketball again. And that's going to be the wrong approach. Just like ignoring the virus is the wrong approach too. And it's very disappointing overall for the NBA right now. That's kind of the direction that they've gone at this point. But I think that's all I got to say on that, unless you had any closing comments.
On that happy note, we will wrap up this edition of the Locked On Knicks podcast, hoping just a general hope that everyone in the NBA stays healthy, and the guys who are sick make a quick recovery. And for everyone else out there, because I'm sure, the way it's spreading around New York right now, I'm sure a lot of people listening are probably sick right now, unfortunately. So hopefully you guys are all doing okay. We wish you all the best, and we will wrap up this edition of the Locked On Knicks podcast. Again, remember to throw us a subscription on YouTube, throw us 5 stars on iTunes. You can write something funny in the review. You can write even go a little mean if you want to, but just throw us those 5 stars. And until next time, peace out, and we will talk to you soon.